This is a special taco. It deserves your respect. And if you are lucky enough to live near a taco shop that has a good one, cherish it. Let's be honest, making al pastor at home is not easy. It's actually probably impossible to make it the way they do in Mexico. Carved off a spit by a dude with a sword who's been doing it his entire life. The marinade part is actually pretty easy. Dried chilies, annatto, pineapple, but when it comes to cooking it, it gets pretty tricky to replicate. I've tried different cuts of pork, I've tried braising it, pressure cooking it, straight up grilling it, and nothing has gotten me that close until recently. So what are we looking for here? What is best case scenario for homemade tacos al pastor? In my mind, we're looking for charred pork with fat that is just beginning to render, a little bit of a piquant flavor from dried chilies and annatto, some garlic, some cumin, and a definite sweetness for some charred pineapple. So with today's recipe, I'm gonna try and replicate the tacos I had in Mexico on the street. For this recipe, you're gonna need 1 cup of pineapple chopped, 3 to 3.5 pounds pork shoulder roast, 3 guajillo chilies, 2 ancho chilies. If you don't have dry chilies, you can sub in 2 tablespoons of chili powder here, 2 tablespoons of olive oil, 1 chipotle in adobo, 1/4 cup white distilled vinegar, and 1/4 cup water. The spice blend here is 1 tablespoon annatto seed or 5 grams, 2 tablespoons salt and 2 tablespoons sugar or 10 grams each, 1 tablespoon cumin or 5 grams, and 5 garlic cloves. Annatto is a pretty important ingredient here. It delivers some of the signature al pastor flavor we are looking for. It's available at Whole Foods and international grocery stores, but that being said, it's not a total deal breaker. If you can't find it, you can still make very good tacos without it. The pork roast I got is bone in, so I'm gonna bone it out real quick. Afterward, deboned, cut the pork in half and then into 2 to 3 inch slices that are about 1/4 to 1/2 inch thick. Once you've got those all sliced, we're gonna set those aside and pile all of our ingredients into the blender. Puree on high until a smooth paste is formed, and we're gonna pour that over our pork. This is important, and I did not capture this on film, but at this point, you need to set aside 1/2 cup or so of this marinade before you start rubbing down the pork shoulder. This is crucial to finishing our pork later, and it's very important. Sorry it's not on video, but make sure you set that 1/2 cup aside now. Once we're coated on the pork, we're gonna throw that in the fridge. We're gonna let the enzymes in this pineapple do their thing to our pork for about 4 hours or up to 24. If you can do this a day ahead, it really is better, but 4 hours is a minimum amount of time it takes to break down this meat sufficiently for us to have it tender. So while our meat is marinating, let's talk about what is al pastor. The word al pastor in Spanish actually translates to shepherd style, which makes sense because there was a wave of Lebanese immigrants that made their way to Mexico who back in the Middle East were traditionally shepherds. This taco is their attempt to recreate something like doner or gyro using the Mexican pantry. So the pork for al pastor is usually leg, shoulder, belly meat that's sliced thin and marinated overnight. It's then stacked onto something called a trompo, which is basically a stick that goes on a spit. And these things can get really big, 50, 60 pounds, and they go into a case in a taco shop and it spins around all day getting charred on the outside. And when you want to get a taco, they shave it off to order, and there you go. From what I could tell in my brief experience being in Mexico, is the taco al pastor is ubiquitous. It's everywhere and people love it. And that tastes really good. Okay, let's get back to it. Let's make some salsa. For our dried chili salsa, you're gonna need 5 garlic cloves, 1/4 red onion, 2 ancho chilies, 1/4 cup crushed tomato, 3 guajillo chilies, and 5 to 6 chili de árbol. Not pictured here is some water and white distilled vinegar that we're gonna be adding a little bit later on. This salsa is a total homage to the salsa I had in Mexico with that street cart al pastor I was talking about. It was super smoky, a lot of beautiful fruity, raisiny sweetness from the chilies. So I'm making this one a lot less hot though. I'm gonna be seeding these chilies, as you can see here, and then we're gonna dry toast them in a preheated saute pan over high heat for about 5 to 10 minutes. I'm throwing in the garlic and then the onion as well to get a char on those too. After about 10 minutes of roasting these, things should be smelling pretty toasty and fruity, so I'm gonna add my tomato in 2 cups of water. We're gonna bring that to a simmer, we're gonna add a lid, and we're gonna cook that till things are more tender, about 8 minutes. Once we're nice and tender, we're gonna transfer that mixture to our blender, and we're gonna puree it briefly to break things down. I think I slightly overspun mine. This is not a flavor thing, but more of like a texture thing. I like it slightly more rustic than this, but it still tastes really good. I'm adding also a teaspoon of salt here and a touch more water to bring this salsa to the texture that I like. We want to get it a little bit saucy, so if it comes out tight in your blender, add a little bit of water. Don't worry about that. Just make sure it's seasoned well with salt. We're also going to be adding about a tablespoon of white distilled vinegar in the blender. This salsa is dope. It's really unique, different than anything you're going to find at the store. It's smoky, tons of dried chili flavor, and if you had some chunky taqueria style chips, it makes a really fun alternative to salsa verde or pico de gallo. We're going to set that aside, and we're going to take our pork, to the next step. That starts with breaking down a fresh pineapple. Basically, I'm peeling it, taking off the sides. We're gonna dice the sides into 1.5-inch chunks that are gonna fit onto a skewer. If you wanna use canned pineapple, feel free. Grab the pork out of the fridge and some wooden skewers. I've soaked these skewers in water for 4 hours while the pork was marinating. This keeps them from turning to ash on the grill. That's right, we're gonna be grilling this al pastor and this pineapple. To build the skewers, go pineapple, pork, 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 pineapple, pork, 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 pineapple. Repeat this until you have no more pork. I got too much pineapple here, so you probably only need half a freshie instead of a full pineapple. Once we have our skewers built, we're gonna head outside and light 1 full chimney starter of charcoal, or preheat your gas grill to medium-high. Before we start cooking the pork on the grill, let's double back and talk about the process here and why I'm using it. Like I said before, I failed many times with various techniques to make al pastor that I actually like. So these are the 2 moves that we're using today to get as close as I've come to creating good al pastor. Number 1 is pineapple juice in the marinade. All the marinades that I had used before this will use water or stock as the base. Pineapple juice, though, has an enzyme in it that breaks down the protein in meat, and it almost acts as a mimetic for slow roasting pork, meaning that you get the same outcome with a different process. So I add pineapple juice to the marinade now, and that helps break down the flesh of the pork just like we were slow roasting it. It gets it a lot more tender, it fully seasons it, and that helps us skip the step of having pork on a trompo slow roasting. The second thing is the refry. I'm gonna be taking this meat, throwing it on the grill to get some char on the outside and to get it mostly cooked through. We're gonna rest it and bring it inside, and then we're gonna slice it thin. I'm gonna take those thin slices of meat, put them into a saute pan and get a little bit of a fry on them with the resting juices and a little bit of the rendered fat. Grilled pork alone, good. Grilled pork that is then sauteed in its own fat and juices, very good. We're using the grill just to bring that signature charred flavor from the spit. This is more of a sear on the outside than anything. We aren't looking to cook this pork all the way. We're just looking to get great char, great flavor all over these chunks of pork and pineapple. Don't sweat cooking the meat all the way here. I repeat, do not sweat cooking this meat all the way on the grill. We're gonna finish that off inside. All you need to do here is have fun grilling some pork and maybe drink a beer. It takes about 10 to 15 minutes to get a proper char on these. Once we're happy with the color, they're gonna look like this, charred all over, looking really nice. We're gonna bring this pork inside and we're gonna preheat a large nonstick pan. Just like we did for the barbacoa, we're gonna finish this meat in the pan, or a la plancha. We're gonna take the pork and the pineapple off the skewers and run our knife through it. We're gonna slice this pretty thin, maybe a 1/4 inch or so. Make sure to break up the pineapple quite a bit too. We want a lot of surprise pops of that in our tacos. Huge chunks of hot pineapple aren't the tastiest thing. I'd rather have them small. Once our pan is hot and our pork is chopped, we're gonna saute this pork on high heat. Don't worry about adding any fat to the pan, plenty will come from the pork. We're looking to get some additional color, some crispiness, and we're gonna finish cooking the meat in this pan. Any juices that ran out onto the cutting board should be added here as well. This pan should be quite hot to get the color and texture that we want. This helps get our pork to that essential crispiness that recreates that spit roasted vibe. After 5 to 6 minutes of this, the pork should be looking good. We're gonna add in our 1/2 cup of reserve marinade here, and we're gonna cook that down just to glaze the meat. That should take about an additional 2 minutes or so. Toss, toss, toss. At this point, taste it. If you think it needs a little bit of salt, now would be the time. And that's it. It's charred, it's tender, it's sweet, pineapple-y. I've got some warm tortillas in the styrofoam Goya joint that I showed you in the last taco video. We got some onions, some cilantro, some sliced limes at the ready, maybe a chilled cervi, maybe a marg. So grab someone you love and share a taco. That pork's crispy, dog. A little smoky salsa. Quite tender as well. The thing I love about al pastor tacos is really like the charred pineapple. Such a surprise every time. This is like my 10,000th one. So there you have it. Al pastor tacos that are easy to make and super fun to eat. These are really close to some of the best al pastor tacos I've ever had. They don't need a lot of gear and they don't take all day to make. All you need is a strong appetite for tacos, like your #1 taco boy, B-Boy. So if you guys likey what we're doing here, a good way to support us is to turn on notifications and hit subscribe. It lets YouTube know that there's a new kid in town and helps us be seen by more people like you. As always, guys, thank you so much for your time and attention. Thank you for sticking around, and we'll see you next time.